At their peak, Sportpesa was the fastest growing and most visibly international brand in Kenya's history, from sponsoring Premier League sides, boxing, and even Formula One to promoting local and grassroots sports. Sportpesa quickly became the second largest company in revenue only after Safaricom. In this episode, we'll look at how the sports betting juggernaut was founded, the deep-pocketed and politically connected multinational founders, the astronomical rise of the Sportpesa brand, and its fall from grace. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe for more incredible stories from Kenya. To fully understand the Sportpesa origins, we have to go back and see how these multinationals with different careers and backgrounds even came together. It all starts with Gerasim Nikolov, also known as Gero. Gero is a Bulgarian national who moved to Kenya in 1999, where he worked as a croupier and worked himself up to later becoming the general manager at the Grand Regency Hotel. During this time, he also founded First Lotto Limited. The company ran the Toto 649 lottery in Kenya. The funding of this venture is alleged to have been supported by the Bulgarian Mafia, who are acquainted with Gero. They paid for the buildings for operations, brought the machines, and facilitated the Toto 649 booths that if you're in Nairobi during the 2000s, you definitely saw one of these blue booths. The next figure is Gene Grand, formerly known as Krantov. Very little is known about him other than he worked in a cabin crew. What we do know is that he came to Kenya around 2006 and was said to go way back with Gero. Both had a sister each that were part of the Bulgarian cohort. During this time, Gerasim became associated with the next future founder, Dick Wadhika. This put him in a position where he was being funded by the Bulgarians and had help navigating Kenya's legislation through his political connections with the Dick Wadhika. Wadhika came from a humble background in Maringo Estate in Eastlands, Nairobi, and rose to become the youngest councillor and later the youngest mayor of Nairobi. He also served as an MP from 2007 to 2010, when his election was nullified and he subsequently lost his Makadara MP seat to political newcomer Gideon Buvi, also known as Mike Sonko, who came from nowhere to defeat both Dick Wadhika and Ruben Dolo in the by-elections, putting an end to his political run. One moment that sticks out during his reign as mayor of Nairobi was on one morning in 2005, hundreds of Kenyan charity sweepstake ticket sellers woke up to find their lottery kiosks demolished by the defunct Nairobi City Council. The demolition happened with the approval of Wadhika, who was the mayor, only for the booths owned by Nikolov's Toto 649 lottery to occupy their vacated spots. In the years after, Wadhika was occasionally spotted in Nairobi in the company of the Bulgarians. He told anyone who cared to ask that they were his business partners. Toto 649 eventually ended up closing due to mounting debt and other operational issues. Staff lost their jobs and no one actually ever won the Toto 649 jackpot. During this time, around 2011, Gerasim was in contact with a Bulgarian billionaire who had interests in the casino business and wanted Gero to open and operate it for him in Kenya. The casino is the Phoenix Casino in Hurlingham, which is a very significant location in this story. While operating Phoenix, Nikolov started having ideas about trying out sports betting. He pitched it to his business associate, Mr. Wadhika, and they decided to pursue it. In 2012, they founded Pevans East Africa Limited, which was the parent company for Sportpesa. They laid the groundwork and by 2014, it was ready to launch. However, they had some financial challenges. Even though Dick Wadhika used to help out, they needed more capital. This is where Paul Ndungu enters the picture. Paul Wanderi Ndungu was the first Kenyan to to acquire a forex trading license in 1995. He is a businessman and investor with multiple holdings in the NSE, where his investment portfolio once peaked at 4 billion shillings in the 2000s. He was also well connected politically, being in charge of campaign fundraising for Jubilee. He was doing well for himself, and his old friend Tuskys told him about the venture. He didn't know too much about sports betting at the time, and he wasn't familiar with the Bulgarians either. But he was good friends with Tuskys and understood that he really believed in the idea, and he had already invested heavily in it and didn't want to lose his investment. He trusted him by injecting $1 million into the company, which greatly helped with the marketing at the very beginning. However, it still wasn't enough. An additional cash injection was needed. And just like the other times when he injected money into Sportpesa, it was in exchange for more shares in the company. He eventually ended up acquiring 17% of the company, which came with a position on the board. And Paul Ndungo eventually became one of the directors of Sportpesa. He didn't really have intentions of being a director and was okay not being too involved, as he knew his friend Tuskys would secure his interests. Unfortunately, just a few months later, on December 14, 2015, tragedy struck. Tuskys was set to meet the Bulgarians for a meeting at the Phoenix Casino in Hurlingham, a place where they were known to spend their time. Not much is known about what happened during that meeting, but Tuskys left not feeling well, checked himself into hospital, and was later pronounced dead. This is the part where Ronald Karauri enters the picture. Ronald is the son of a former MP and a high achiever in academics. Having scored an A from Mangu High School, he was to do engineering at the University of Nairobi, but dropped out to pursue a Kenya Airways program for young upcoming pilots, where he was accepted. He worked at Kenya Airways for 11 years, 6 years as a co-pilot and 5 as a captain. When Karauri was not flying, he actually enjoyed clubbing. He even had his own club, the Skylax Lounge in Westlands, where he spent a lot of his free time. He also picked up and liked playing poker. He was good enough that he wanted to compete. He liked Texas Hold'em, which is one of the most popular poker variants in casinos. His casino of choice, the one and only Phoenix Casino. Here, he met with Tuskys and the Bulgarians and sparked a friendship. These were still the early days in 2014, when they were still looking for potential investors like Paul and now Ronald. During their poker sessions, Karauri and the Bulgarians started discussing business ventures. Karauri owning a club and the Bulgarians a casino, he was thinking the venture would be an entertainment joint, but it was actually Sportpesa, and Karauri saw the potential of the idea. He sold a parcel of land he had and ended up investing all the money into Sportpesa and joined the company. It was a very expensive investment where 5 million shillings got you 1% and you needed at least 5% to join the Sportpesa board. Karauri ended up acquiring 7%. After the untimely passing of Tuskys, his 21% stake in the company was given to his widow, Asenath Wachera Maina, who is a very private figure who stayed far from the spotlight. Without Tuskys, there was vacuum in the company, which was filled by Karauri, who ended up being the CEO of the company. He quit being a captain to focus on Sportpesa, a move that friends and family were very skeptical about, and understandably so. I mean, he was already doing pretty well for himself with literally a high-flying career as a captain. And just like dropping out of university to pursue being a pilot, it was yet another leap of faith that paid off. With Karauri at the helm, Sportpesa went on an aggressive marketing campaign. The timing was perfect. M-Pesa's accessibility made mobile betting incredibly convenient, and Sportpesa's user-friendly platform was a game changer. Aggressive marketing campaigns, often targeting the youth, fueled the company's rapid growth. The campaigns included internet ads, billboards, and sponsorship deals of 50 million Kenya shillings each to Mafia and AFC Leopards. Then eventually sponsoring the whole league and even buying the naming rights, which had the league rebranded from the Kenya Premier League to the Sportpesa Premier League. They had sponsorships in Tanzania, South Africa, and internationally, especially in Europe. They even had a multi-year sponsorship with Premier League side Everton and partnerships with Arsenal, Hull City, and Southampton. Being the patriotic Kenyan and football fan that I am, I genuinely felt proud to see a Kenyan brand featured on such international platforms. Pesa organized the friendly matches that had established Premier League players like Wayne Rooney sharing the pitch with Kenyan footballers for pre-season matches. And who can forget when in a penalty shootout against Everton, when Sven Yida of the Kariobangi Sharks did the now viral fake hamstring injury celebration. The clip went so viral, the celebration was added in video games. The sponsorship deals went beyond the Premier League to F1, where they sponsored the Racing Point F1 team. Sportpesa was becoming a global brand and it acted like it. Their marketing and sponsorships were meant to compete with international betting companies like Betway or Bet365, as locally, they dominated 2/3 of the local betting industry. In the current 2024-2025 EPL season, half of the teams in the Premier League are actually sponsored by betting companies, which just goes to show how Sportpesa was way ahead of the curve almost 10 years ago. However, with all the publicity, their critics also grew. The government started raising genuine concerns about gambling addictions and social problems resulting from Sportpesa's influence. President Uhuru Kenyatta didn't like the fact that money Sportpesa was getting from poor Kenyans was shipped abroad to sponsor European sports, understandably so. But despite the undeniable negative impacts of gambling addiction, Sportpesa was also supporting local and grassroots sports more than the national government ever did through the Ministry of Sports. So what went wrong? The answer lies in a perfect storm of regulatory changes, political pressure, and internal disputes that would ultimately lead to Sportpesa's dramatic downfall. The trouble began brewing in 2017 when President Uhuru Kenyatta, concerned about the social impact of the betting industry, pushed for increased taxes on betting firms. The initial proposal was a staggering 50% on all betting stakes, a move that sent shockwaves through the industry. After significant pushback and public outcry, a compromise was reached. A 35% tax on betting revenues was implemented in 2018, still a massive jump from the previous rate. This tax hike hit Sportpesa hard. CEO Ronald Karauri argued that the new tax structure made their business model unsustainable. The company projected significant drops in revenue and warned of potential job losses and cancellation of sponsorships for local sports teams. In 2019, the Kenya Revenue Authority dropped a bombshell. They demanded 95 billion shillings in back taxes from Sportpesa. It was an astronomical sum that the company vehemently disputed, insisting they had always complied with their tax obligation. This dispute, coupled with the increased tax burden, led to Sportpesa's inability to renew its operating license, forcing the company to cease operations in Kenya in October 2019. The government's crackdown didn't stop there. In a move that sent shockwaves through the industry, several Bulgarian directors and employees of Sportpesa were swiftly deported from the country. It was a clear message that the government was serious about reining in what it saw as a problematic industry. For the next 15 months, Sportpesa's absence left a gaping hole in Kenya's betting landscape. Competitors like Betika seized the opportunity, capturing market share as Kenyans continued to seek out gambling options. But behind the scenes, complex maneuvers were taking place that would set the stage for Sportpesa's controversial return. A significant restructuring of the company's ownership was underway, with a focus on removing two prominent board members, Paul Ndungu and Asenath Wachera, the widow of the co-founder Dick Wathika. The board had been having internal issues without Dick, as the people who were involved through him felt like they were being excluded from the Sportpesa operation, and decisions were being made without their input, and such decisions include the massive sponsorships or the money that was allegedly leaving the country, which sparked money laundering accusations. Not many details about the board issues are public, but the fallout is said to be a nasty one, as it reached a point the two founders were finding out about sponsorship deals on the news like the rest of us. Simultaneously, some directors of Pevans East Africa, the original owner of Sportpesa, allegedly orchestrated a covert transfer of the gaming business and brand ownership to a new entity, Milestone Games Limited. Rumors began to swirl that Milestone Games ownership included members of the Kenyatta family, raising eyebrows and questions about potential conflicts of interest and political influence. The tide began to turn in 2020 when the Kenyan government, facing pressure from both the betting industry and sports organizations that relied heavily on the sponsorships, decided to remove the additional 20% excise duty on betting stakes. This tax removal was seen as an olive branch to the betting industry and paved the way for Sportpesa's potential return. And return they did, but not without controversy. After a 15-month hiatus, the reopening of Sportpesa was suddenly announced via a tweet by Ronald Karauri, catching many off guard. However, the company's comeback was immediately marred in legal challenges. A court order was issued to halt Sportpesa's operation due to ongoing disputes over brand ownership and licensing. Paul and Asenath were not involved in such a decision, neither did they agree to it. But it seemingly meant nothing even if they held a combined 38% in Pevans. Yet somehow, in a move that raised eyebrows and fueled speculation about the company's political connections, Sportpesa continued to operate despite the legal injunction. The ousted board members Paul Ndungu and Asenath Wachera didn't go quietly. They made serious allegations of what they termed as state capture of the company, claiming that members of the Kenyatta family were directly involved in the takeover. Paul Ndungu, the former chairman, penned a lengthy 40-page letter to President Kenyatta, detailing his version of events and suspicions. The accusations included illegal transfer of M-Pesa pay bills allegedly facilitated by Safaricom's M-Pesa CEO, Sitoyo Lopokoyit, who's married to Ronald Karauri's sister. Unconstitutional takeover by members of the Kenyatta family, and claims that Sportpesa's current operations were illegal due to the outstanding court orders. But it is not clear how the issue stands right now. What's clear is, regardless of the controversial return, Sportpesa somehow magically remains operational, and the users of the platform don't seem bothered by the drama behind the scenes. The very market that Sportpesa worked so hard to create and dominate was now being carved up by competitors like Betika and Odibets. These rivals benefited from a more mature market, with millions of Kenyans already accustomed to online betting thanks to Sportpesa's earlier efforts. From dominating over 70% of the industry, it is very unlikely that they will be able to reach this level of dominance ever again. What's clear is that the landscape has fundamentally changed. The market that Sportpesa pioneered is now a fiercely competitive arena with multiple players fighting for supremacy. And that's pretty much it for this one. If you enjoyed the video, consider watching how Chris Kirubi was involved in the rise and fall of Uchumi. If not, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.